Picture this. You match with a woman on a dating app. The conversation starts strong. She's engaged, asking questions, sending long replies. Then suddenly, the tone shifts. Replies slow down. Messages get shorter. You see the read receipt, but nothing comes back. Your mind starts racing. You wonder what you said wrong, whether to double text, whether to pull back or push forward. You've been here before, and it never feels random. If this sounds familiar, welcome to the channel. This is a space built for men who want clarity in the modern dating world, not guesswork. Here, we talk honestly about attraction, behavior, and the unspoken dynamics shaping man-woman interactions today. No sugarcoating, no feel-good noise, just grounded insight you can actually use. This is the dating environment most men are navigating right now. Endless options, constant distraction, silent tests happening beneath the surface. And too many men are walking into these situations blind, relying on outdated advice or pure instinct. That's why effort feels wasted, attraction feels unstable, and results feel unpredictable. This video exists to change that. What you're about to learn isn't about clever lines or putting on a fake persona. It's about recognizing patterns, human patterns, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns that repeat themselves, especially in modern dating. When you understand these patterns, you stop guessing. You stop overthinking. You stop reacting emotionally to situations that were never personal in the first place. Most men are taught to focus on what to say. Very few are taught how attraction actually functions beneath the surface. That gap is where frustration lives. That gap is where men lose leverage, confidence, and self-trust. When you don't understand the internal drivers influencing behavior, you end up handing over control without realizing it. The modern dating world has amplified certain tendencies. Social media, constant validation, endless choices, and instant emotional feedback have reshaped how people connect. Men who don't adapt feel confused, drained, and stuck questioning themselves. Men who do adapt move with calm, direction, and quiet confidence. This video breaks down psychological pressure points that influence attraction and decision-making, not to manipulate, but to understand. Understanding creates composure. Composure creates presence. Presence creates respect. You're going to hear things most people avoid saying out loud. Not because they're wrong, but because they challenge comfortable stories. If you've ever felt like you were doing everything right and still losing momentum, this will connect the dots. Pay close attention. Each section builds on the last. Miss one and the picture stays incomplete. Before I dive in, click on that subscribe button and don't forget to drop a like. 1. Emotional pull. Emotional pull is the force that makes someone lean in without being asked. You don't create it by explaining yourself, proving intentions, or showing how serious you are. Emotional pull comes from how you move through interaction, especially when nothing is guaranteed. Most men try to build attraction by adding more attention, more availability, more reassurance. They believe consistency alone creates connection. What they don't see is that attraction responds to contrast, not excess. When everything is on the table immediately, there's nothing left to feel into. Women respond strongly to emotional movement. That movement comes from curiosity, uncertainty, and rhythm. Not confusion, not games, rhythm. When interaction has rise and fall, when conversation breathes instead of floods, emotional pull increases. Here's where men usually break it. They feel a connection starting, and instead of letting it develop, they rush to lock it down. They shift from grounded presence into outcome-focused behavior. The energy changes. She feels the weight of expectation before desire has time to stabilize. Emotional pull weakens the moment pressure enters. A man with emotional pull doesn't rush clarity. He doesn't need to. He's comfortable letting interest reveal itself. He listens without interrogating. He speaks without over-explaining. He leaves space after moments that land instead of filling silence with noise. Silence matters more than most men realize. Silence allows emotion to echo. When you remove silence, you remove depth. Emotional pull lives in what isn't immediately resolved. Another key factor is emotional self-regulation. Women pay close attention to how a man handles uncertainty. Does he stay steady when replies slow down? Does his tone remain consistent when plans shift? Does he stay respectful without becoming distant or reactive? Emotional pull strengthens when a man shows he's not controlled by outcomes. This doesn't mean being cold. It means being composed. Emotional pull also grows when a man has his own center, a life that doesn't pause for attention, priorities that remain intact, opinions that don't dissolve under approval pressure. When a man adjusts his entire behavior to keep interest, that adjustment is felt immediately. What pulls emotionally is not perfection, it's grounded presence. Men often underestimate how quickly emotional shifts are noticed. Changes in texting pace, changes in enthusiasm, changes in tone. These are read not as mistakes, but as signals. When your behavior stays aligned with who you are before and after interest, emotional pull stays intact. There's another layer most men miss. Emotional pull doesn't come from trying to be impressive. It comes from being internally settled. When a man isn't chasing reaction, reaction follows. When he isn't forcing connection, connection deepens. This is why some men seem effortlessly magnetic. They aren't doing more. They're doing less with intention. They let moments land. They let interest build. They don't rush the process because they trust their position within it. Master emotional pull and you stop guessing. You stop chasing clarity that hasn't earned its place yet. You move with patience, control, and awareness, and that changes everything that comes next. 2. Need for approval. The need for approval shows up quietly, and when it does, attraction starts leaking out of the interaction. Most men don't realize they've slipped into it because it often feels like being polite, attentive, or respectful. The difference is subtle but powerful. Approval-seeking energy is when your behavior begins adjusting to keep interest instead of expressing who you are. Your words become safer. Your opinions soften. Your decisions start to revolve around her reactions. This shift is felt immediately, even if nothing is said about it. Women are highly sensitive to changes in confidence, not loud confidence, internal confidence. When a man starts checking for reactions before finishing his sentence, when he over-explains harmless choices, or when he apologizes for things that don't require an apology, the signal is clear. He's looking to be accepted instead of respected. Respect and approval don't grow together. One replaces the other. A man who needs approval asks indirect questions to avoid disapproval. He agrees too fast. He hesitates before expressing disagreement. He explains his value instead of living it. None of this looks dramatic. It looks normal. That's why it's dangerous. Approval seeking also shows up in availability. When you become instantly reachable at all times, when your schedule reshapes itself around someone you barely know, it communicates a lack of personal structure. Structure is attractive because it signals self-trust. Without it, attraction weakens. This doesn't mean being unavailable on purpose. It means not abandoning your priorities to gain favor. The strongest counter to approval seeking is clarity. Clear opinions, clear boundaries, clear pacing. When you say what you mean calmly and stand by it without tension, you remove the need to be liked in every moment. That steadiness is grounding. Women don't need you to agree with them. They need to feel you're solid. When a man holds his ground without force, without argument, and without apology, it creates a sense of stability that approval never can. Another place approval seeking hides is in overgiving. Too many compliments, too much reassurance, too much emotional labor early on. Giving isn't the problem. Giving to be validated is. When generosity is driven by outcome, it loses its power. A man with no need for approval gives because it aligns with his character, not because he expects something back. That difference is felt instantly. Rejection is the ultimate test here. Men who need approval take rejection personally. They explain, they bargain, they try to change her mind. Men who don't need approval accept it cleanly. They stay composed. They don't collapse or retaliate. That response alone often leaves a lasting impression. This doesn't mean rejection disappears. It means it stops defining you. The moment you stop needing approval, you stop performing. When you stop performing, you become more present. When you're present, interaction becomes real, and real connection always carries more weight than perfect behavior. Approval fades. Self-respect doesn't. Master this, and you stop shrinking yourself to fit situations. You stop chasing reactions. You move forward with clarity, regardless of outcome. That's where attraction stabilizes and where control returns to you. 3. Too much attention. Too much attention feels generous, but it often works against you. Most men believe attention is the currency of attraction. The more you give, the more valuable you become. In reality, attention only has power when it's measured. When it's constant, it loses meaning. In the modern dating world, attention is everywhere. Notifications, messages, likes, compliments. When you add yourself to that noise without distinction, you don't stand out. You blend in. The issue isn't effort, it's saturation. Too much attention shows up as rapid replies, constant check-ins, and filling every gap in communication. It shows up as long explanations, daily compliments, and always being the one to restart conversation. None of this feels wrong in the moment. It feels engaged. But over time, it creates imbalance. Attraction grows when interest is mutual and paced. When one person carries all the momentum, the other relaxes. Emotional investment slows because there's nothing to respond to. No space to miss you, no moment to wonder. Space is not distance. Space is breathing room. Men often hear, be consistent, and interpret it as be always available. Consistency means your behavior doesn't swing emotionally. It doesn't mean your presence is constant. A steady rhythm is more attractive than nonstop availability. Another issue with too much attention is that it removes challenge. Challenge isn't confrontation or conflict. It's the sense that access to you has value. When attention is given freely and endlessly, it communicates that your time carries little cost. Time is your most valuable asset. How you spend it signals how you see yourself. Women notice when a man's life seems empty outside of interaction, not because ambition needs to be proven, but because independence is attractive. A man who has things to do doesn't need to announce them. His pacing already shows it. Too much attention also increases emotional pressure. Even if you're being kind, constant focus can feel heavy. Attraction thrives in lightness. When interaction becomes a daily obligation instead of a shared choice, interest fades. This is where many men panic. They feel the energy shift and respond by giving more attention to fix it, more messages, more reassurance, more effort. That response accelerates the decline. The correct response is restraint. Restraint isn't pulling away emotionally. It's allowing interaction to find its natural pace. It's responding fully when you do engage, then stepping back without anxiety. It's trusting that connection doesn't need constant maintenance to survive. Attention is powerful when it's intentional. When you speak, mean it. When you compliment, make it specific. When you engage, be present, then disengage without guilt. This balance creates contrast. Contrast keeps interest alive. Men who master this stop overthinking communication. They stop tracking response times. They stop trying to entertain. They let interaction unfold naturally. And when interest is genuine, it moves forward without force. Too much attention is rarely the solution. Awareness is. Control your attention and you control the pace. Control the pace and attraction has room to grow. 4. Testing limits. Testing limits is not about pushing boundaries aggressively. It's about observing how you respond when expectations shift. Many men misunderstand this and either become defensive or overly accommodating. Both reactions weaken their position. Limit testing happens early and often. It can be subtle. A late reply after consistent texting, a last-minute change of plans, a small disagreement, a playful challenge. None of these are attacks. They're moments of information gathering. Women pay attention to how a man handles friction, not conflict, friction. Does he stay calm? Does he explain himself unnecessarily? Does he fold to keep peace? Or does he hold his ground without tension? Your response in these moments says more than your best behavior ever could. Men who fail limit tests usually do so by over-adjusting. They apologize too quickly. They accommodate at their own expense. They abandon preferences to maintain harmony. This sends a signal that their boundaries are flexible under pressure. Strong boundaries don't need defending. They're expressed once and reinforced through consistency. For example, when plans change, a composed man doesn't complain or chase reassurance. He adapts calmly or reschedules without frustration. When a playful challenge appears, he doesn't react with insecurity or force. He responds with ease, or he lets it pass. Ease is the key. Another common mistake is taking limit tests personally. When men interpret every shift as rejection, they become reactive. Reactivity creates emotional instability, and instability erodes attraction. A man in control understands that not every moment requires a response. Sometimes neutrality is strength. Silence can be composure. Stepping back without resentment communicates confidence. Boundaries also apply to time, communication, and emotional labor. If you respond instantly to everything, explain every decision, and absorb every emotional fluctuation, you signal that your limits are undefined. Defined limits create safety. Women feel safer around men who don't collapse under pressure. Safety doesn't mean predictability. It means emotional steadiness. When a man's behavior doesn't spike or drop based on minor tests, trust forms naturally. Another layer of limit testing is respect for your values. When you state a preference and it's lightly challenged, your reaction matters. Do you retreat? Do you argue? Or do you calmly restate and move forward? Calm repetition builds authority. Men who pass limit tests don't seek approval. They don't prove strength. They simply remain consistent. That consistency removes the need for further testing. Limit testing isn't something to fear. It's a normal part of interaction. It reveals compatibility, emotional maturity, and self-respect. When handled well, it strengthens connection instead of weakening it. The goal is not to dominate or win. The goal is to remain centered. Men who understand this stop seeing challenges as threats. They see them as moments to show stability. They stop overreacting and start responding with intention. Once your limits are clear, without force, without explanation, interaction becomes smoother, respect increases, emotional tension stabilizes, and when limits are respected, attraction has a solid foundation to grow on. 5, wanting what's rare scarcity drives attraction more than availability. It's not about being aloof or playing games, it's about presence that has natural value. Most men overlook this principle, assuming constant attention equals connection. In reality, too much accessibility reduces perceived worth. Think about it. Things that are abundant rarely create urgency or desire. Limited opportunities, carefully guarded time, and selective energy naturally increase interest. Scarcity is not manipulation. It's a reflection of a man who has priorities, standards, and a life outside of interaction. Men often make the mistake of over-investing early. Endless texts, frequent calls, instant replies, all intended to build connection. But the effect is the opposite. When your availability is unlimited, it signals that your attention costs nothing. Without cost, there's no tension, no pull, no sense of value. Women unconsciously notice this. Emotional investment follows challenge and exclusivity. A man who is fully present when he engages but not constantly available creates emotional contrast. Contrast is magnetic. It signals that his energy is not wasted and that moments shared are meaningful. Scarcity also reinforces self-respect. Men who allow their time to be fully accessible to someone they barely know often sacrifice their own boundaries and priorities. That behavior communicates low standards, which weakens attraction over time. Creating scarcity isn't about withholding or games, it's about intentional living. Schedule your time around your goals, commitments, and values, and engage fully when you interact, then step back. This builds tension naturally, letting interest grow without effort. Another aspect of scarcity is selective communication. Not every text deserves a response. Not every social media interaction warrants your attention. Pick moments that matter and invest energy there. The selective approach reinforces value without appearing cold or manipulative. Scarcity also intersects with unpredictability, but in moderation. A man who is too predictable becomes background noise. A man who is completely unpredictable creates chaos. The balance is being consistent in your character and values, but not in every micro behavior. Let interaction breathe. Let her curiosity build. This principle applies to presence in conversation as well. Don't flood with details. Don't overshare your entire life. Hold back just enough for her to want more. When you offer something rare, your full attention, your genuine insight, your perspective, it carries weight. Most men underestimate how subtle scarcity is. It's not dramatic. It's not about big gestures. It's about quiet control over your time, energy, and attention. Women notice the difference between someone whose presence is ordinary and someone whose engagement is meaningful. Scarcity also protects your emotional energy. Men who give too much too fast risk burnout and frustration. Controlled availability keeps your interactions positive, high quality, and enjoyable. It reinforces your own boundaries while letting her value what you offer. Mastering scarcity is mastering tension and value. It's not about creating distance unnecessarily. It's about making your presence count. A man who understands this principle attracts attention naturally, maintains interest, and commands respect, all without trying too hard. When you combine scarcity with consistency of character, emotional pull, and boundary clarity, you become someone whose presence is genuinely magnetic. People don't just notice you, they seek you out. Attraction becomes becomes a natural byproduct, not a forced effort. 6. Feeling safe. Feeling safe is more powerful than most men realize. Women constantly scan for stability, emotional steadiness, and reliability, often subconsciously. Safety isn't about physical protection. It's about emotional and psychological security. If a woman doesn't feel safe, attraction wanes, no matter how charming or attentive a man is. Many men mistake confidence for safety. While confidence is important, it alone doesn't create it. Safety comes from consistency, predictability in character, and calm responses to tension. Women notice how you handle small stressors, disagreements, and unexpected changes. A man who stays composed under pressure communicates emotional stability, which builds trust and comfort. In contrast, men who overreact, overexplains, or become defensive erode safety. Even subtle signs like snapping at a minor inconvenience, reacting anxiously to a late reply, or visibly seeking validation signal instability. Emotional unpredictability triggers instinctive caution, and caution kills desire. Another key factor is reliability. Safety is reinforced when words match actions. If you commit to plans, show up on time, and follow through on promises, you signal that your energy and attention are trustworthy. Women naturally invest more in men they perceive as dependable. Safety also includes respecting boundaries. Men who pressure, manipulate, or attempt to accelerate emotional intimacy destroy it. True safety comes from letting connection progress naturally while honoring limits, both yours and hers. Boundaries signal maturity, control, and self-respect, all of which amplify attraction. Your tone and energy contribute as well. Calm, measured communication communicates stability, whereas erratic, emotional bursts communicate volatility. Small shifts in your voice, pacing, or expression create subconscious cues she reads instantly. Women detect tension before words even form. Another overlooked factor is self-possession. Men who maintain their own interests, friendships, and personal goals provide a sense of balance. A man consumed by attention-seeking or approval undermines safety. Independence communicates that you are emotionally whole and not dependent on external validation. Safety also includes predictability in reactions. When a woman tests limits or presents minor friction, a man who handles it calmly without overreacting signals that he can manage real-life challenges. That calm presence triggers trust, which is a cornerstone of sustained attraction. Importantly, safety does not mean being boring or passive. It means being grounded while still displaying agency. You can maintain playfulness, assertiveness, and charisma, all within a stable framework. Women are drawn to men who can excite without destabilizing them. Men who master the art of making women feel safe do so quietly but powerfully. They do not announce it. They simply embody steadiness in words, actions, and energy. This creates a foundation on which attraction grows naturally, without pressure or forced effort. When you prioritize safety, you stop overcompensating with charm or attention. Instead, your presence alone becomes compelling. Women feel secure, respected, and drawn to invest emotionally. Safety is the invisible magnet that keeps connection alive and meaningful. 7. Staying in control. Staying in control is one of the most overlooked aspects of modern dating. Control isn't about dominance, manipulation, or being cold. It's about managing yourself, your emotions, and your energy in every interaction. A man who stays in control projects reliability, confidence, and magnetism, even in moments of uncertainty or tension. Many men lose control without realizing it. It happens when they chase responses, over-explain themselves, or adjust their behavior to avoid conflict. They react impulsively to small signals, thinking it will fix a situation or win approval. What actually happens is the opposite. Emotional instability becomes visible, interest fades, and attraction diminishes. Control begins internally. It's about regulating reactions to stress, rejection, or minor frustration. It's about responding instead of reacting. Women notice this immediately. Calm energy communicates strength without arrogance. It signals that your mood and presence are not dependent on external validation. That's powerful. Another dimension of control is pacing. A man who controls the tempo of conversation, decisions, and engagement subtly establishes leadership without force. He doesn't dominate or dictate. He simply sets a natural rhythm, allowing interest and tension to build in a way that feels effortless. Women are drawn to rhythm and flow more than words or gestures alone. Control also applies to boundaries. Men who clearly clearly define what is acceptable and what is not, without guilt, defensiveness, or explanation, command respect. Boundaries protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. When you maintain them consistently, women unconsciously trust your steadiness, which strengthens attraction. Emotional control is another layer. Men who let minor setbacks, late responses, or casual disagreements dictate their mood appear insecure, even if unintentionally. Women read this instantly. Emotional volatility communicates dependency, which decreases interest. Stability communicates maturity and resilience, which increases it. Self-control extends to communication. Men who overshare, overtext, or oversmile in early interactions reduce perceived value. Restraint, in contrast, creates curiosity. Silence and space after meaningful exchanges amplify emotional pull. A man who controls his communication doesn't overexpose himself. He allows interactions to breathe. Control isn't about being rigid. Flexibility exists within stability. A man who can adapt gracefully while remaining composed demonstrates mastery. He's assertive when necessary, playful when appropriate, and reserved when it strengthens tension. This balance between flexibility and consistency creates magnetic presence. Another overlooked point: control is visible in nonverbal behavior. Posture, eye contact, tone, and pacing all signal your emotional state. A man who appears relaxed, confident, and grounded, even in small moments, reinforces perception of control. Women notice and respond to these cues more than any statement of intent. Mastering control transforms interactions. It reduces anxiety, increases attraction, and strengthens your position without manipulation. Women feel safe, intrigued, and connected because they can rely on your stability while still sensing challenge and depth. Control is the final layer that unites all other dynamics: emotional pull, approval resistance, measured attention, boundaries, scarcity, and safety. Without control, all other efforts lose potency. With control, attraction becomes effortless, sustainable, and self-reinforcing. A man who truly stays in control doesn't just participate in dating dynamics. He directs his own experience with clarity and power. Mastering these dynamics changes everything. Emotional pull, measured attention, clear boundaries, scarcity, safety, and control aren't tricks. They're your foundation. When you understand how women respond to energy, rhythm, and stability, you stop guessing and start acting with clarity. Attraction follows naturally when you remain grounded, consistent, and self-possessed. Stop chasing approval, stop overgiving, and stop reacting to every signal. Instead, move with intention, protect your time, and trust your presence. The men who succeed aren't louder or flashier. They're steady, confident, and deliberate. Apply these principles, and connection, respect, and attraction fall into place.